Hey guys, so we have some new information in the Emmanuel Haro case, specifically when it comes to his mother Rebecca and his father Jake. So last week we noticed that there was an ex parte hearing scheduled for Rebecca for the 4th that was ultimately vacated. A lot of people were wondering what that could have been about. Well, now we are seeing, according to the documents, that this was pertaining to orders that the defense was requesting. So I wonder if this has anything to do with the fact that she and her public defender are attempting to get her trial moved out of Riverside into Banning. They could be requesting other orders as well, however that's not specified on here. Now Jake Haro also had an ex parte hearing scheduled for the 4th as well that not many people were talking about, and we're hearing that that was a motion for confidential contact visits. Now what is a confidential contact visit? It is a private unmonitored meeting between an incarcerated individual and a specific authorized visitor. Unlike standard visits, which are usually conducted in large supervised settings as well as recorded most of the time, these confidential contact visits ensure privacy for the individual and the incarcerated person to have a conversation without being monitored and or recorded. So I think that it's safe to say that whatever Jake Haro wanted to discuss off the books, off the record, has to do with his current charges. Now Jake Haro has also been moved out of the Smith Correctional Facility to the Southwest Detention Center, also known as the Coys M. Byrd Detention Center in Murrieta, California. This is about an hour away from where he was previously at, and this detention center is known for managing individuals who are, quote, considered a high security risk. And they could be considered a high security risk either one, due to the nature of their crimes, or two, because of their behavior that is exhibited within the correctional facility. This new Southwest Detention Center that Jake is in is equipped with extensive security measures to control and supervise inmates, as well as to effectively ensure the safety of the public and other incarcerated persons in this maximum security facility. The next time that we'll see both Jake and Rebecca Haro in the courtroom will be on September 16th for their felony settlement conference, and then the day after that will be both of their preliminary hearings. We should get some more information about what law enforcement has against both Jake and Rebecca Haro in order to keep them locked up on the 17th during their preliminary hearing. You guys know as soon as I hear it.
It's still a complete mystery, one that continues to gnaw the edges of this already heartbreaking story. When the tragic disappearance of Emmanuel Haro first broke, the immediate spotlight fell on two names that dominated headlines and news tickers across the country: Jake and Rebecca Haro. The world scrutinized every detail of their lives, their actions, their statements, their body language. But quietly, almost without warning, a third figure emerged. This wasn't just a bystander or a distant relative. It was Jake Haro's own sister, a woman who suddenly stepped into the conversation with fiery determination. She defended her brother and Rebecca with a level of passion that instantly captured attention. She dismissed critics, countered narratives, and tried to redirect suspicion. For a brief moment, it seemed as though she was going to become a central voice in the unfolding drama. And then, silence. Just as suddenly as she appeared, she was gone. No interviews, no statements. No follow-up posts online. Nothing but a void where her voice once was. People began asking questions. Where did she go? Why did she withdraw when the scrutiny intensified? Was she silenced by choice, or by something, or someone else? This vanishing isn't just a side note in the Haro case. It raises uncomfortable questions about what she might have known, what pressures she may have faced, and whether her disappearance from the public eye was coincidence or calculated. Families in crisis often rally together, yet here we see an unusual fracture, a family member who stepped forward, then retreated into the shadows. Some argue it suggests internal conflict. Others whisper it points to knowledge too dangerous to keep speaking about. So we're left with an unsettling puzzle, the sister's voice, once loud and defiant, now erased. And in that silence, many believe lies a critical piece of truth, one that could shift the entire understanding of this case. Welcome back. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button, and make sure you turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our deep dive coverage. Drop a comment below telling me what city you're watching from. I appreciate all the support. So here's where things stand. Last week, everyone was waiting for an ex-parte hearing involving Rebecca that had been scheduled for the 4th. But when the day arrived, court records revealed that the hearing had been vacated. On the surface, that might look like just another scheduling hiccup, but when you dig deeper, the details become more telling. The documents point to motions her defense team had been filing, requests tied not just to procedural issues but potentially to the very foundation of how her case would unfold. One of the strongest possibilities is that Rebecca's attorneys were attempting to shift her trial from Riverside to Banning. That's not just about geography. It's about juries, perceptions, and the atmosphere of a courtroom that could drastically shape the outcome. A venue change can mean the difference between conviction and acquittal, depending on how sympathetic or skeptical a local jury might be. At the very same time, Jake had his own ex parte hearing on the docket. His request was different, but no less significant. He was asking for confidential contact visits. To most people outside the justice system, that phrase doesn't mean much, but in this context it carries weight. It refers to a private, unmonitored meeting between an inmate and a specific approved visitor. No cameras rolling, no microphones hidden in the room, no corrections officers standing over their shoulders. Just an inmate and a visitor, alone. That type of meeting is rare, and it's usually tied to sensitive information or strategy. So the immediate question becomes, what did Jake need to say that couldn't risk being overheard or recorded? Almost simultaneously, another development unfolded. Jake was transferred from Smith Correctional to the Southwest Detention Center, a facility designed for maximum security and high-risk inmates. Transfers like this aren't random. They are calculated, often hinting at heightened concerns about behavior, safety, or the severity of what lies ahead in trial. And all of this, Rebecca's vacated hearing, Jake's request for secretive visits, his sudden transfer, circled back to the looming dates of September 16th and 17th. Those are the days when, at last, the court is expected to hear the evidence investigators have been guarding. The tension building toward those hearings is not just procedural. It's a moment the hidden layers of this case may finally break into the open. But while all of that was unfolding behind courtroom doors, another narrative began dominating the conversation. The sudden, emotional intervention of Jake's sister. Out of nowhere, she appeared online, posting a video that immediately grabbed attention. In it, she launched into a passionate defense of both her brother Jake and Rebecca, determined to push back against the mounting criticism that had surrounded them from the very beginning. She spoke directly to the camera, insisting that this was not neglect, not abuse, but a clear-cut kidnapping. She portrayed Rebecca as a loving, attentive mother who would never intentionally harm her child. Her words were calculated to shift perception, to cast suspicion not inward toward the family but outward toward some unknown predator. She didn't stop there. In an attempt to solidify her version of events, she recounted, in detail, what she claimed had unfolded that day in the parking lot. According to her, Rebecca had been changing Emmanuel's diaper when a stranger approached. The moment she described was chilling in its simplicity, a tap on the shoulder, the sound of a single word, "Ola." And then, according to her account, everything exploded into violence. She described a sudden attack, the disorienting blur of consciousness fading, and then the horrifying realization of waking up to find Emmanuel gone. The sister's story painted a vivid picture of chaos, of a mother who had been blindsided and overpowered in a moment she couldn't have prepared for. The emotional weight of her plea was undeniable. She cried, her voice cracked, and for some viewers, it struck a chord of sympathy. But for others, one small slip in her words stood out like a blaring siren. At one point in the video, as she described Emmanuel, she referred to him in the past tense, speaking as if his fate had already been sealed, as if the outcome was no longer uncertain. That single detail set off alarm bells across social media. Comment sections exploded. People began dissecting her every word, replaying the clip, slowing it down, quoting the moment where she seemed to suggest Emmanuel was already gone. To many, it wasn't just an accidental choice of words. It was a subconscious admission, a clue that her defense of the family might have revealed more than she intended. Then came the bombshell that shifted the entire conversation, the revelation of Jake Haro's past. For weeks, speculation had swirled about his character, about what investigators might uncover. But when the truth surfaced, it was far worse than most had imagined. Court records revealed a prior conviction for willful cruelty to a child. Not just any child, but his own infant daughter from another relationship. She had been only 10 weeks old when the abuse occurred, a fragile newborn at the very start of life. The injuries she suffered were catastrophic, leaving permanent damage that she will carry for the rest of her days. Doctors testified to the extent of the trauma, and the courts found Jake responsible. It was not a matter of rumor or accusation. It was a documented conviction, carved into the public record. This revelation reframed everything. The narrative of Jake as a misunderstood father, as someone being unfairly judged in the current tragedy, began to crumble. The moment people connected the dots between his past conviction and Emmanuel's disappearance, skepticism turned to outrage. Suddenly, the sister's emotional video defending her brother and Rebecca was no longer just questionable, it was incendiary. Viewers demanded answers. How could she have vouched for him so passionately in light of such a horrific history? Was her plea born of ignorance, an honest lack of knowledge about the full scope of his past? Or was she deliberately ignoring the truth, trying to shield her brother from the kind of scrutiny that might expose him further? For many, this was a turning point in public perception. Sympathy gave way to suspicion. Those who once believed the kidnapping story now questioned whether the family's narrative was simply a smokescreen. And while Rebecca's role remained under the microscope, Jake's past cast a long, undeniable shadow over both of them. The sister's defense, once meant to sway public opinion, had instead backfired, intensifying the outrage and placing the Haro family under an even harsher spotlight. The haunting reality of what Jake had already done to one child could not be ignored, and it forced everyone to ask what really happened to Emmanuel. And this is where the mystery deepens, taking a darker and more unsettling turn. The very moment Jake's criminal history came to light, the sister's online presence seemed to evaporate into thin air. The videos that once stood as bold defenses of her brother and Rebecca, deleted. The social media posts where she pleaded with the public to stop judging, gone. Even her profile activity, once buzzing with comments and shares, fell completely silent. It was as if she had been erased from the digital landscape overnight. The timing was impossible to ignore. Did she delete everything in an attempt to escape the backlash that was flooding her direction? Or was there something deeper at play, a realization that the story she had been pushing could no longer hold weight against the crushing truth of Jake's past? Her disappearance left people with more questions than answers. Silence, in a case like this, doesn't soothe suspicion, it inflames it. Many began to wonder whether her absence was a calculated move, a way to distance herself from a narrative she had helped create but could no longer defend. Others speculated that she may have been pressured into silence, perhaps by those closest to the case. Whatever the reason, the once defiant voice had now gone quiet, leaving behind a vacuum that only fueled public unease. At the same time, another disturbing detail surfaced, one that added a new layer of heartbreak to this already devastating story. Another child in the Haro household had been removed from the environment and placed into the custody of Child Protective Services. And here's where the haunting contradiction comes in. Jake's sister, the same woman who had stood in front of a camera claiming to love her nephew Emmanuel with every fiber of her being, never stepped forward to take in this child. Despite her pleas of loyalty and family unity, she allowed the baby to be absorbed into the system, waiting for stability in a foster home rather than with relatives. That decision, or perhaps that refusal, spoke volumes. Words are easy, but actions reveal the truth. Her silence now echoes louder than any defense she ever gave. And in that silence, many see an admission that whatever she once claimed to believe, she could no longer stand by, no longer fight for, and no longer defend. So what really happened here? That's a question that refuses to fade. On one hand, some believe Jake's sister was simply deceived, manipulated by the same loyalty that blinds so many family members in the face of devastating truths. Perhaps she clung to the idea that her brother couldn't be capable of such horrors, convincing herself that defending him was an act of love rather than denial. In this version of events, she becomes a tragic figure herself, a woman who stepped into the spotlight, not out of malice, but out of desperation to protect the people she loved. But there's another theory, one far more unsettling. What if she wasn't naive at all? What if she knew more than she let on, and her emotional video wasn't a misguided attempt at defense, but a calculated move to control the narrative? By painting the disappearance as a dramatic kidnapping, she redirected suspicion away from Jake and Rebecca, buying them time and public sympathy. If that's true, then her words weren't just misguided, they were complicit. She would have knowingly spread a story she understood was false, inserting herself into the investigation not to help Emmanuel, but to shield those under suspicion. Both theories clash, but they share one undeniable truth. Her sudden disappearance changed everything. Her voice, once loud and defiant, is now gone. Every trace of her online activity has been scrubbed, as if she never existed in the case at all. And that silence has become the final, haunting piece of the puzzle. The public is left grappling with questions that may never be answered. What exactly did Jake's sister know, and when did she know it? Did she vanish to protect herself from scrutiny, or to avoid exposing a truth too dangerous to speak aloud? And perhaps most haunting of all, where is she now? The one person who dared to defend the Haros has gone quiet, and in that silence, the mystery surrounding Emmanuel's disappearance only deepens. Jake and Rebecca are now heading into court this week, and with that step, the case edges closer to revealing the answers the public has been demanding since the very beginning. For months, investigators have kept their evidence sealed, waiting for the moment when it could be presented before a judge. Now, that moment has come. The hearings ahead will not just decide the course of Jake and Rebecca's legal battles. They may finally shed light on what really happened to Emmanuel. Witnesses, documents, forensic details, all of it will start to come into focus. And yet, even as the spotlight shifts firmly onto the courtroom, one shadow lingers stubbornly in the background. That shadow is the mystery of Jake's sister. She was a lone family member who stepped forward when the walls began closing in, the one who defended them fiercely and publicly. She put her face, her words, and her credibility on the line to tell the world that her brother and Rebecca were innocent, victims of a cruel abduction. And then, without explanation, she vanished. Her videos disappeared. Her voice fell silent. Her presence evaporated as though she had never been part of the narrative at all. Her silence had become more haunting than her original words. It raises questions that strike at the heart of this case. Did she know more than she ever admitted? Did she say too much, slip up in ways she couldn't recover from, and realize the safest choice was to disappear? Or was she simply overwhelmed, another victim of the lies and chaos swirling inside this family, someone who tried to help but got swept away in the fallout? Until she resurfaces, until she chooses to speak again, her absence will remain one of the most unsettling elements of this case. The courts may deliver answers about Jake and Rebecca, but the mystery of the missing sister hangs unresolved, like a ghostly echo that refuses to fade. So what do you think? Did she know more than she admitted? Or was she just another casualty of loyalty to a family drowning in secrets? Share your theories in the comments below. And stay tuned. Next time on the True Crime Radar, we'll dig into Jake Haro's past and the disturbing struggles that may have paved the way to this moment.